They said they're actually using Handy Ledger and manually uploading each transaction into the accounts. And I was thinking, whoa, I haven't done that since 2007. I didn't know that
Whoa,
anyone
that's
was
wild.
still doing that.
Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited for today's conversation. Chris Davey is the founder of Accountica, a modern accounting firm that's quietly built a reputation for clarity, responsiveness, and generally helping business owners make the better financial decision. He's also behind Search Fund Us, supporting entrepreneurial acquisition pathways here in Australia. Thank you so much for joining us today. You built Accountica in a pretty intentional way, not noisy, not flashy, just solid system, genuine client relationship. What made you build in this way instead of typical big accounting firm approach?
Yeah, it's all stems from my background. I've been in public practice accounting predominantly for 20 plus years, and uh, I'd kind of worked in too many transactional accounting firms, I guess, where you would see someone every year, and it just wasn't close enough. So it was always my intention with Accountica to build a closer relationship based accounting firm. And that's kind of stemmed initially from the advisory work predominantly to now moving into ETA, entrepreneurship through acquisition, and search funds for the last couple of years. So it's key relationships as well as systems and processes. It can't be one or the other, in my opinion.
And what was the moment you realized the normal way wasn't going to work for you?
Before I started Accountica would be the answer to that one. So yeah, the old way, it's how you say it becomes a little bit like Groundhog Year for, I'll say, the typical compliance accountants and sometimes bookkeepers as well, where it's the same old, same old, same old, same old. And knowing how I'd had to operate in the past, where I was a financial controller of the group, but the director still had the final say about those systems and processes and essentially the business model. Yeah, it was prior to Accountica being founded. What is that, 4.5 years ago now? Odd. I figured, no, it can't be done this way any longer, and I had to do it kind of my way.
Fantastic. And what part of that shift was hardest operationally?
I think a lot of it is stems from app fatigue. Actually, there is so many great apps out there that it can get really noisy, especially at the moment. AI startups all over the place sending some great marketing messages, which may or may not be the solution to people's problems. So when I first started, working out back in the old days using XPM, knew it was super clunky, did its job as an example, but really not ideal whatsoever. So I looked into all sorts of the typical options for like workflow management through for accounting practices and bookkeeping firms, and I actually ended up using ClickUp, which is not that common for accounting firms. There was a quite a steep learning curve, shall I say, but also totally worth it in the end because also with how we deliver our services here, it's so customizable, and also you say they are on the forefront of all things tech. So I'm really happy we chose them. And I don't think many people use them in accounting and bookkeeping. I only know of, I think, two other
Yeah, I never
firms.
heard about, to be honest, using the accounting space. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. It's
interesting.
what do they say, the one app to rule them all kind of thing, which is a bit of a marketing play. But in saying that, it really does a lot of things. Like realistically, I could not have a subscription for Loom. I could not have a subscription for Slack. All those kinds of things are internal of ClickUp, which does help.
Okay, and then you use for client onboarding, everything, you use ClickUp as well.
Onboarding, no, we use specialist software for that now, which is called Onboard Me. We were using Ignition before, which is a very popular one and really did a good job for quite some time. And I decided to give these guys a shot, and yeah, it's actually been really good. So it's a lot of the additional things around like KYC requirements and things like that, which they really do well. ID verification, all that syncs straight into our XPM systems.
Some you have like a lot of, done in your back end. That's fantastic. Amazing. So how do you coach your clients beyond the numbers and into better decisions?
Uh, Always with data is the answer to that.
That
Well,
is the
I would
answer.
say starts with data, but also includes the gut. And this is, I think, something that business owners learn over time. Now, quite often, I think, especially in the early stages, they don't have the ability to get that accurate, like really good data picture to be able to make good decisions. So things quite often are more reliant on gut instinct. And as businesses grow, then we've got really good software as well that we can use these days. Zero have bought Sift, which is really great for the ecosystem to be able to bring some more um, transactional level data to decision making. But also, as I say, there's all the data in the world. And then we start with the conversation with the business owners, because I can look at something, P&L, balance sheet, cash flows, and go, okay, this is what I think is happening. This is what I can try and determine is happening. But until you have the discussion with the business owner, that's where you get real insight. And beyond that, if you can get on site and on the floor and talking to the people in the business, not just the owners, that's where you get even more info. And that then flows up to the financial decisions and strategies that we actually put into place.
That is gold. Fantastic. Yeah, usually who's in the, battlefield knows the big battles, isn't it?
Yeah,
I think
yep.
yeah.
The bills, I think, are really sometimes, um, I I'd say a bit unheard, and I think their opinions on the job are some of the most valuable. And business owners, as they get a bit larger, sometimes they step back a bit from operations, and that can be a real detriment.
Yeah. 100%. Where do clients usually get stuck from your point of view?
That's a good question. It really depends. Thinking all the businesses that I look after here, there are so many different options. I'll say quite often it's people management, really. Like, we know that people are required for business to grow. But also at the same time, it's difficult to manage people, manage change, manage expectations. All of that is the probably most common, not issue, but just thing that business owners have to deal with across all industries that I deal with.
Yeah. It's really hard to deal with people when they are overloaded, when they have a lot of manual tasks. 'Cause with the AI trend now, I think people are a bit skeptical to use AI. But once they adopt it, it's not to, you know, replace people, but also to help them work strategically, right?
Yes.
And you have your people doing the interesting and strategic stuff that will actually motivate them.
Yeah,
That's
I
how
think
I
so
see
too.
this. Yeah.
This is how I see it for the most part. And then I do think there's a what's the word here? There is a level of task that some people are actually like. For me, if it was just like super mundane, repetitive work, I could not do it. It's not my thing whatsoever. Other people are kind of happy to be, let's say, just head down, bum up, get the stuff done, and they're okay with that. Now, from an operational and efficiency point of view, from a business owner, uh, it's hard to say, I'm going to keep employing this person at, 60, 70,000 a year, whatever it may be, for a lower level position that could be replaced, or not replaced, or at least a portion of those responsibilities replaced by AI or other tech. And then we're getting into moral decisions there, and that's a difficult one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wave, right? I think the business owner needs to get in.
I think you're right in saying that most employees will end up utilizing AI as a value add. It's not a replacement. Can't see it being a replacement. I think it's really in the short term. You know, you can ask some questions here and there on ChatGPT or others, and you can get some answers back. And from a professional's perspective, sometimes it's just wrong, honestly. And so if I'm signing a letter, as example, like a tax letter of advice, there's no way I can just rely on a chat GPT answer. It's not happening anytime soon.
Definitely. Totally agree. Yeah. So, I mean, what's the pattern you see across most SMEs in this subject?
It's I think it comes down to the founder actually and who they hang around is what I've noticed. So as an example, I was chatting with we're doing a Q of E for a business buyer, sorry, quality of earnings report for a business buyer. And I reached out to their accountant and I said, what sort of accounting system do you use? Can I get some access? Is that possible? Send some reports, whatever it may be. They said they're actually using Handy Ledger and manually uploading each transaction into the accounts. And I was thinking, whoa, I haven't done that since 2007. I didn't know
Whoa,
anyone
that's
was
wild.
still doing that. So there's businesses out there like that still. And then there is, I work with Early Adopters Hub as well, which is another interesting angle. I don't know if I mentioned that, but that's an account tech startup. So they connect accountants with startup founders to ensure that the problems they're solving are actually problems that we need solving and we're willing to pay for. So I'm working for all these people all the time. And then have a chat with some others and they're like, working still 20 years ago. So, yeah, I think there's still a lot of really old legacy systems out there. And if you're hanging around all the tech people and the AI people, you kind of forget that they're still out there.
Yeah. So, do you usually like advise your clients as well to, join and improve their processes as well?
Yeah, I mean, it's always part of the things that we look at. So we look at their end to end kind of process and this is pretty much the same in every business, is from the time that you get a lead in the door, what does that look like? How does that go through the sales process? How does it become a deliverable? How is that tracked? How do we optimize all of that? And yeah, so that's honestly the one of the things that really just is broad across every business. So we always look at that. And those ones in particular is where it's really key to get employee input because business owners, they're not probably not the best unless they're literally still on the tools in a small business.
Yeah. So, how do you get them to actually act on your advice?
That's a great one. So we now use some really cool software called Brief, and that is some software for accountants and advisors, basically, that able enables us to systemize our advisory process. So, as an example, we have a check-in system. So, monthly advisory clients will receive their check-in at the end of the month. It'll be just a highlight of, what are the major things that have occurred, major challenges, how you're feeling in your business, what are the key things that we need to talk about in our meetings as well. So, where I get a lot of insight prior to a meeting to make sure that the agenda is going to be the most value adding. And then also through that software, we are able to record everything, but also track our actions. So we have a chat, we say, all right, this is what we're going to do by the end of next month. We put the action in there right then and there. And the software sends them reminders as well, but also we are the ones kind of cracking the whip occasionally.
Yeah, well, yeah, from outside, it feels like Accountica like runs very lean.
Yes.
What systems, apart from all this you mentioned, or process create that most efficient for you?
Good one. Probably between ClickUp, Zapier. We use Zapier a fair bit for our automations as well, even though ClickUp does its own automations. Um, yeah, that's probably the main two, really. And the fact that a lot of so we use Encord for our website hosting, and they're really onto it as well with some really good automations and workflows as well. So between those three are probably the majority.
That's really refreshing to see like a firm owner, be onto that stuff. I think it's amazing. I love that. So, whi- which part of the workflow still feels like a big bottleneck?
Um, Probably the CRM in ClickUp is not ideal. So probably going to look, yeah, actually in the process of setting up a dedicated CRM for that. Because it was intentional from day one to not grow too fast. This was another thing that I'd learnt from previous accounting experience. Really, just taking on those ideal clients. So we've been able to get away with it for some period of time, but it's not ideal. So yeah, implementing Go High Level at the moment, actually.
All right. Oh, that's fantastic. Cool. And what do you feel is still too manual for you? Like, is the client onboarding in this CRM part?
Probably just the CRM, actually. The client onboarding is really smooth through Onboard Me Now, but it's just a CRM functionality. You can customize so much in ClickUp that you can make it a decent CRM. But that one for me, realistically, is not my forte. So I could outsource that, or I could just go to some dedicated platform, which we've chosen to in the end.
So if you could have like wave a magic wand and automate something tomorrow from your business, what would you be?
Deliverables. Get all the work done without my input. Nah, that would actually be it. But no, that's not really possible. With the kind of work that we do, it is very detailed and analytical as well as connected to the client relationship. So I think probably still that CRM side of it, really getting all of the data as well as connection points just integrated a bit better, which is yeah what we're hoping to do with Go High Level.
Do you think go high level, take all the boxes you need?
Yeah, I really like the look of it. We use HubSpot as well in the in Search Fund Oz, which is a great platform, but also gets really expensive as soon as you need the advanced enterprise version. I think would have to head to for the next level, and so whereas Go High Levels are yeah a fair bit cheaper and seems to have the great majority of the functionality as well as white labeling services and things like that. So we'll be able to use it we do some buy side advisory. So we'll be able to kind of, can subcategorize internal of Go High Level, which was a key point for us.
That's fantastic, Chris. I'm really impressed. I see people say like accountants are vague. Usually you seem to have built the opposite. I think what principles shape your approach to communication and client experience?
Mm, Client experience first will be setting those expectations early is the probably number one thing. So, whenever we have a new client or new potential client, we really want to mm, ensure that they understand how we work and what we expect of them to be able to provide the most value. As an example, utilizing Brief for our check-ins. If a client has signed up for a monthly advisory package, right, or a quarterly advisory, whatever it may be, and they haven't got the time, the 5 minutes to fill in a check-in to let me know what's going on so that I can do my best work, well, that's not going to work. It's a short check-in, and this is something I highlight often is don't think about it too much. It should actually be the first thing that pops into your head. The question of what's the biggest challenge you've had in the last month. I don't want you to think about it for 30 minutes and go, oh, it could be this one, could be this one, could be this one. It's always the first thing that pops into your head.
Yeah, that's fantastic approach. Love that. Yeah, and yeah, where do most firms drop the ball, do you think?
Hmm. I think it depends at what size. The smaller ones, I think quite often get stuck in the doing everything. You've got 17 hats on, which honestly is me in a way. And I have designed it that way for a reason. Cause I enjoy that. actually.
Alright.
I never wanted to be siloed as a just an accountant per se. I actually like doing all the other stuff as well. As I say, I may not be the best at some things, and I will outsource when required. But I think in those early stages where you're marketing, sales, deliverables, invoicing, APAR, the whole lot, that can sometimes be just too much for the early founders, and growing to the stage where you're comfortable that you've got the ongoing revenue to pay for your next staff member is sometimes an early issue. And then I think with the larger firms, it's more probably around the client relationships. Honestly, I think, so many of the accountants, specifically, not bookkeepers. Bookkeepers are great at keeping on top of things because they
Yeah.
have to be. Accountants, I think, a common reason for people coming to us is that they don't get any response from their accountant, and they haven't heard from them in a year. They kind of don't know they exist. So, they're just another client on their client list. And that was never how I wanted to build my firm. And yeah, I think sometimes as they just get bigger and bigger, it's kind of just hard to keep on top of everyone and actually know what's going on. A big thing is in their life, not just in their business for me. So, like, I got invited to one of my great clients' bonfire at the farm a few weeks ago, and getting out there, hanging out with the family. Like, I love doing all that stuff.
That's a fantastic point of view. And usually what I say to my clients, you should automate your systems and focus on what is important for your business is your client relationship. So how do you maintain that level of service as you scale? You're getting more clients, you're getting more. So how do you, if you're doing everything, how can you
Yeah.
maintain that
Well,
service?
sorry, I don't do everything. That's for sure. Definitely not.
Uh,
Um, uh, no, I've got the team that helps me as well. Got a small team, so um, as the business scales, well, I quite often use contractors for project work as well. So that's a good flexible method of outsourcing some expertise, basically. You don't need a full timer. You don't need a part timer, and quite often for some of the work we do as well, it's very specialized. So it's not easy to find these people full time either. So for that reason, yeah, we just use subcontractors on a project basis. Um, and it really does help that easing into growth rather than, you've got a big hit of a full time employee tomorrow.
Yeah, that's good. I'm impressed because you also built Search Fund Oz, which is a unique space in Australia. How does that tie into your view on business ownership and long-term value creation?
Yes, Search Fund Oz is a fund of funds in Australia. Just for people listening who don't know what a search fund is, I'll give you the too long didn't read version. It was established in 1984 by Stanford, and it's basically the traditional model is where a group of 10 to 12 investors typically will invest in a person. That person has a company with a fancy shareholders agreement, basically, that will allow them to budget for approximately 2 years to pay themselves a wage, pay some interns, pay some subscription fees, potentially an office, to do nothing but search for and acquire their ideal business, which has some very specific financial metrics, but also is really a lot about the fit. So the model itself's been around for a long time, 40 odd years. It's only been in Australia for about 5. So Search Fund Oz is a investor in the searches itself as well as operating businesses. And yeah, we're just helping to drive it's called ETA, entrepreneurship through acquisition ecosystem here.
That's fantastic. I love that. So, do you think do more founders need to think about acquisition as a pathway?
Well, for me, I'm highly biased, honestly, on this one. The we kind of know the probabilities of startups when we're talking higher risk startups, like startup, not small business founder. I think those two things really do need to be separated. The likelihood of success is not high. We kind of know that. Whereas what we do with search funds is we look for profitable businesses already cash flow positive. There's always risks. There's always things, skeletons in the closet. We don't know how scary they are. We do a very, very thorough due diligence checks on, things like the financial side, legal side, operational, sometimes tech as well is required to mitigate those risks as best as we can. But at the end of the day, we're buying a business that already has product market fit and spits out some cash. That we don't have to start from zero. So we also have the ability to leverage that with a bit of bank debt, potentially seller notes as well. So not saying it's easy, definitely not easy. It's still really tough going. You are still going to be the operator of a SME slash lower middle market business. However, in comparison to going from 0 to 1, I am heavily biased in saying it's a pretty good option.
There you go. So I think, what kind of person you think succeeds in the search fund model?
Mm, we kind of get there's three main groups in total. However, one of those groups we don't really have in Australia. So the first group, that's that one, the MBA graduate, where they've gone through an MBA program, they've heard about search funds, they're like, oh, light bulb moment, didn't even know that was a thing. How is this even possible? Is quite often the responses you get. But there's no tertiary education system in Australia yet. I'm working with Bond University, who are just a little bit over that way, to try and change that right now. But realistically, there's not many of those people. The second group are typically from investment banking or private equity, where I'll put a line in the sand here and go pre-transactional experience or post-transactional experience. So those kinds of people have done everything up to the deal. So all the origination, the commercial DD, they're really good on typically on financial modeling, all that kind of stuff, writing LOIs, so letters of intent. Whereas the third group of people is typically operators. So they may have, operated a small business in the past. We've had a few failed startups. We've had people who they're CEOs of pretty decent sized companies with no equity. I'm like, hey, wait a sec. I could actually be equity owner in a smaller business, potentially get a larger percentage of a smaller pie.
That's gold. Appreciate you, Chris. So let's go back a bit for accounting. So where do you think accounting firms need to evolve in the next 3 to 5 years to stay relevant?
I was immediately thinking about this guy I was just chatting to with his handy ledger. He needs to get on board with any systems. Honestly, would be a start for someone like that. I think just being around the zero ecosystem and actually getting involved in that, I think, really helps because there are so many great apps connected to Zero. Now, in saying that, Zero's been the market leader for so long in Australia now. It will be interesting to see. I do know there are some other options, more options now. They'll be interesting to see if they can really get a foot in the door with the accountants because the fact that Zero has its Blue platform and Zero Tax and Practice Manager all together, and it's free for accountants to use and bookkeepers, really, I think, was a great move by them, and it makes everything very, very sticky. However, in saying that, the platform is, it's older and I'm not a tech guy, so I'm just going to use the words tacking on AI bits here and there. Whereas there are other startups these days which are trying to kind of rebuild and rethink that process from an AI first perspective. So if someone like that can really they could change the game, I think, if they can get a foot in the door on the partnership level with accountants and bookkeepers.
Well, Chris, just one comment. You said you're not really techy. from what I have a conversation with Armand, you are techie. You are like way there,
I
advanced.
don't feel like it. I feel like I know of them. I do okay with them, but I play around with them. But I'm not. I'm definitely not coder level or developer level. That's for sure.
You don't need to be nowadays. That's the beauty of AI, isn't it? I think that's
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, vibe
Well,
coding left, right, and center. I've made a few broken apps to date.
look at that. Oh yeah. So I think we passed a lot of the time, eh? Before we close the official part, for anyone listen who wants to connect with you or learn more about your work, what's the best way to reach you?
Yeah, definitely on LinkedIn is my major social platform these days. So it's just Chris Davey. You'll link that in the comments. Also on Instagram these days, all the marketing gurus say we have to be on there. I tried to quit socials, but they made me go back.
And TikTok?
Yeah, I
No,
even got a
yeah, on that.
TikTok. Oh my
You
god.
got a TikTok. Look
Yeah,
at
I'll do
that.
some dancing for people if you want, but I don't think anyone wants to see that.
That's
Yeah, they're the
fantastic.
main ones, but definitely LinkedIn is the number one for me.
Awesome, awesome. Chris, thanks so much for sharing your insights. This was incredible, valuable. I really appreciate your time and openness to be here.
No problem. Thank you very much. It's been a really enjoyable chat, and I hope I've been of value to some listeners.